Ghana, the first empire to rise in West Africa, flourished from the 6th to the 13th century, reaping most of its profits from gold-rich lands to the south. This legend recounts Ghana's downfall. Wagadu, which still survives, is a city in Upper Volta. The prosperity of Ghana was not a human work. The empire owed its wealth to an enormous serpent, which everyone worshipped. The reptile was named Beta and lived in a pit. Tradition dictated that each year he must be given as a propitiatory offering the most beautiful girl of the empire, adorned with all her finery. Each clan, each tribe, fulfilled by turns this sorrowful sacrifice. Wagadu was a region of miraculous prosperity. Rains of water brought nourishment to the earth and carried it to the cotton, the sorghum, the fruit trees, which, thanks to the sustenance, produced magnificent harvests. Rains of gold bestowed the metal from which were chiseled the heads of walking sticks, for men as well as their spurs, and the jewels and rings of women. The dense population was mosaic in which moved the Bambara, overly eloquent warriors, the Sarakaho, recounters and philosophers, the Konsake, a race of artists, and the Palho, great lords fiercely attached to the pastoral life. The Palho women wore heavy amber beads and necklaces on their bronze chests and set at the crest of their enormous hairdos like the stars in the firmament. The Mosso had a light and supple stride, accepted by the slow dance of their arms, which moved in the muslin sleeves of their baubles. They wore gold and bracelets as necklaces, as rings on their feet, and as earrings. All the cities of the empire were protected by a magic invisible barrier that held invaders in check. Thus, one year, it happened that the martyr of the Serpent of Wagadu was to be a young girl of unparalleled beauty named Sia. She was the fiancée of Amadou Safetiko. Amadou the Teketan. Sia at 16 was already a fine young woman. The most beautiful jewels were put to shame by her fine appearance. The sweetness of her voice, the curve of her breasts, and the graceful proportions of her hips. And Amadou the Tecton loved his fiancée more than his taboo. It was with suffering that he watched approaching the dawn of the day on which Sia was to be swallowed by the sacred serpent of Wagadu. On the eve Amadou spent the night of torments, and immense sadness seized him, and he threw himself on his tara, a bed made of tree stalk, joined together with strips of bark, his head boiling with bitter thoughts. The sun rose slowly in the east. Its clear, straight rays encircled it with the halo shape of purple. With great fright Amadou saw the day filter through a slit made by the door of his room. He left his hut like an ottoman. He took his sabre from its sheath and molted leather, which preserved it from rust, and all day, in order to escape his grief, he sharpened his sword on a gritty stone. Toward evening the sabre was so sharp that it cut the wind. When the sun had set, without the knowledge of anyone, Amadou went near a large pit surrounded with offerings, where Beta lived. In haste he built a straw hut sheltered behind a screen of trees. There he hid himself. The ancient ones had formed a precision that was to carry Sia to the ritual sacrifice. Darkness had drowned the huts depending around them, and night had swallowed everything in its depths, even though the thoughts of men. And suddenly, deep tones of tam-tam shattered the night with its arrows, which struck through the shadows, pouring out their significant meaning. It is the signal of the hour of sacrifice. The tam-tams had tried to say it in lively rhythms, which on other nights bathed the moon had carried the long line of girls toward the marriage hut in the same way their sweet song was beat out. But tam-tams, in their gray motif, sent forth this time the lamentations of sorrow. Sia was wrapped with the loin cloth. which during her free time she had made under the shade of the yellow fig tree with the blue leaves in hope of making it her marriage costume. During the night, while one could distinguish only the lugubrious echoes of a weeping tam-tam, Sia went forward slowly, pushed toward death by the inexorable escort of the ancient ones. When they were a few steps from the refuge of Beta, they abandoned the young girl after the most ancient of the ancients had pronounced the solemn sentence, full of resignation. Remain here and forgive us. Sia no longer had the use of her legs. She knelt down, her hands over her eyes in the naive gesture of the hare, which head thrust in a thicket, believes it possible to escape danger because he no longer sees it. Soon, the pointed head of Beta emerged from the pit. The serpent then rose through the darkness with a rapid thrust and moved toward the inert ball that the young girl had become, shielded in her loincloth. Beta scented its prey with caution and brusquely dashed back into its home. In an instant afterward, the long, flexible body of the serpent spurted out like an arrow. Belly glistening, there was a moment of pause. Then the hideous animal drenched the young girl with its venom, and with an impeccable movement, plunged down into its pit again. The sticky liquid that the serpent had spit shook Sia with repugnance. Screaming, she tried vainly to disentangle herself with the loincloth and her boa, which were enveloped in the same horrible paste that stuck to her and froze her with terror. But Amadou, the Tocton, awaited in the darkness. Although he was very much afraid, his jaws frozen, he maintained his senses. He knew that Beta only struck its venom on the third appearance. He now held himself tense and opened his eyes wide, because the moment of combat approached. From the pit arose a great arrow, vertical and oblique in all the same time, which threw itself on Sia, circling her from an astonishing precision. But Beta was not as fast as Amadou. With one stroke of his flawless saber, the head of the Serpent of Wagadu was cut off. Beta regenerated with the rapidity of drops of rain following one upon another, a second and third, fifth, seventh head, all animated by the same intention of swallowing the young girl. But none of them was able to withstand the saber of Amadou, who loved his fiancée more than his fetish. The last head cut off flew away, saying, "For 7 years, 7 months, and 7 days, Ghana will receive neither rains, water, nor rains of gold." And Beta fell into the Boer, a river where the Mandingos find gold. The body of Beta was convulsed in enormous coils, of which successive waves died on the edge of the pit. In a final moment, it left its refuge, with the effect that the tail broken off and flew away. It fell in the valley of the Falim, where the golden riches of the Senegal are found. For 7 years, 7 months, and 7 days, no rain watered Ghana. The rivers dried up, the valleys became barren, famine and thirst decimated men, who fled toward lands where life was possible. Thus did Ghana end, the most famous empire and the cradle of African civilization. Its splendors became only evocations, the sad dreams of the African guitar under the shrouds of sand.